Welcome to Buckets, post-game reaction coming to you from the Tommy John Home Studios. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined as always by Brandon Anderson at Wheaton Brando on Twitter and the Action Network app. Devoted Wolves fan. He lives and dies and never stops believing in this team. And his Minnesota Timberwolves have officially gone further than they ever have because they have won a conference finals game. And oh, did they win a conference finals game? Minnesota wins 143-101. I just missed Thunder minus 2.5. Just could have gotten there with a few more buckets. What really sucks is, so we had a pregame parlay, Brandon, that was everybody like role players shoot better at home. That was our pregame parlay that we put together, and it was really good. I thought it was a really good one, and it was especially good because it was based off of exactly what happened. The Wolves bounce back spot, the Wolves getting it done here in game 3 to make it a 2-1 series, and everyone that was like, well, this is over. Well, it's going to be a sweep. Well, are the Thunder ever going to lose again? Yeah, maybe we should just settle down like a little bit. I tried being like, hey, the Wolves are pretty good. And then I bet the Thunder, because I'm a moron and everything is bad. But I will say on that parlay, God, we had Ant 4+ threes, cash. Nas 2+ threes, cash. Conley over 1.5 threes, cash. Dante DiVincenzo 3+ made threes, 2, because they didn't have to play basically from the middle of the third quarter on. We also, on the underdog plays, we had that Anthony Edwards 40+, and if he wanted to, he could have gotten that 40 ball tonight. He absolutely could have gotten that one. Finch, this is what I expected. Chris Finch looked like an actual great NBA head coach. He made all the adjustments. I'll get into my thoughts, but what are your reactions from game 3?
I mean, greatest Timberwolves win in franchise playoff history, possibly. Like it's on a short list. Highest point total in franchise history in the playoffs. Terrence Shannon scored more than every Thunder player tonight. I don't know what the odds were of that. Like plus 9, but like 9 more nines after that. Just, yeah, an absolute drubbing. And I think, I mean, a lot of things were impressive. 20 of 40 on threes, 50% on 43s. You're probably going to win. You're probably going to do all right in that game. 50-31 on rebounding. A monster edge, admittedly, helps when you don't miss your shots. And they miss all their shots. You get a lot more chances to rebound. But I think, you know, we'll talk about like what takeaways matter and don't matter here. To me, among the many impressive Wolves things, besides the made threes, besides the big start, besides the Terrence Shannon second quarter minutes, Oklahoma City is really good. And every time they made a push, and they made a few pushes, I saw one of us bet Oklahoma City live after one of the pushes. I saw it. It was out there. They made the pushes, and the most, to me, the best thing Minnesota did tonight was they kept responding to each and every push. Every time the Thunder made a push, they did at the start of the third quarter again. Every Minnesota fan in my timeline was like, oh, here we go again. Like 12-0 run, bam, right back down to 22. And it's like, oh no, they're going to make a game of this yet. Timeout. Minnesota responded. It was right back up in the 30s, like 2 minutes later. Like, I understand that, you know, 30 down to 20 back to 30 doesn't feel like nothing. If you watch the playoffs, like that game suddenly was not necessarily over. That Minnesota showed up in game 3. Fine. You have to show up in game 3, down 0-2, coming home, all the trends. We knew that part. But that they took like 5 counter punches from Oklahoma City, forced Daigneault to actually play a card. He went small coming out of halftime. No Hartenstein. He played a card. He did a thing. They forced an actual counter, and they still kept coming back from the punches. I think, to me, that was the most impressive part of the night.
Antoine Gadd says, love your work, Brandon. I know you'll chat about it later in the pod, but Edwards series rebounds leader was on the money. Great capping on that one.
Yeah, Ant Rebounds is knock on all the wood, but Ant Rebounds is looking very good. We talked on Buckets with Brandon Kravitz about how do we hedge this? How do we hedge it with J-Dub? J-Dub, I thought, was really rough tonight. We praised him, how well he played the first two games. Maybe it's just because, Matt, you and I both were on the rebounds plus assists, and it really stuck out. But it didn't have it tonight. He was not having it.
Nope.
My J-Dub 4 assists every game bet that cashed last round finally died on the vine today for this round. But J-Dub 4 rebounds gave us some real space in the Ant rebounds lead. The big men still aren't getting too many boards. J-Dub had a rebound at the end of game 2 with 10 seconds left, or maybe less than 10. That play is the only play separating Ant from not just leading the series in rebounds, but leading every game in rebounds so far. So we're a long ways to go. We got at least 2 more games. A lot can happen, but we feel good. We'll keep looking for ways to play some Ant rebounds. We played Ant rebounds first quarter tonight. We got 5 in the first quarter as well. That looks like an angle to check out again going forward. I'm not sure that's an easy one for books to catch up on as well. So 3 first quarter rebounds, maybe an escalator there as well.
All right. Series price. The Thunder are still minus 1,000 at DraftKings. I may get 923. Wolves are plus 650. I'm not like we've got Wolves plus 2.5 from the series preview. I'm good with that. Just good with just kind of hanging there. Antonio says,
talk to me about good with that. Go ahead with Antonio, and then I have a question for that.
So Antonio says, is it disrespectful to say that the game meant nothing? I mean, the Wolves got their win, but I can't see them winning the series. Yeah, I mean, look, again, it's like our preview script for the series was, hey, the Wolves could be competitive in this series. They can't win, but they can be competitive. And our thought was they can probably get one in OKC. Nope. And so now it's like they got to win both here, or they're going to have to take game 5 in OKC. Those are their only options for surviving. So,
well,
we'll see.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Those are factually the only ways there's no well. I admit to being wrong with my well. You are correct. The season is over if they do not do one of those 2 things.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask my question. So you bet Timberwolves plus 2.5 for the series. Is that right?
Yeah.
I effectively did. I bet Thunder in 6 or 7. I bet that plus Thunder winning the series. So here we are 3 games in, and we texted about this. I didn't get a chance to respond to you as the game was wrapping up. And you asked a question. I'm going to ask it back to you, and then I'll respond also. But you asked, how do we make so much out of OKC winning 2 games by 20 points and then nothing out of this huge blowout? So I want you to respond. What do we do with this big blowout? And kind of especially in relation to the series and going forward, and then I'll chime in with thoughts too.
One, I will say this, that all of the conversation about like, well, this just shows you how good Denver was. Okay, the Nuggets never had a game like this, not at all, because they weren't good enough to. I cover that team. I know how good that team was, and the answer is not very good. And the fact that they were able to pull the Thunder into a 7-game series was more about the game script, what they were able to do, and the specific personnel, and along with whatever happened in game 1, which I still do not know what happened. The Wolves are an actually really good team that played and had a game script and had a game strategy and a game plan that was drawn by a kindergartner who had sniffed a lot of glue in games 1 and 2. And then this game, this was a Chris Finch masterpiece. There was tactical stuff in this. This wasn't just shooting. They made 2 major adjustments in their coverage. They said, we're pressing up on Shea and he's murdering us and getting behind us, and we're fouling him and all these types of things. And we're not limiting him at all. And the role players are free to do whatever they want because we're so worried about Shea. So instead, what they did was OKC, the natural thing that they want to do. And I talked about this, about how Shea does not want to attack Rudy that much. They were moving their picks way up in the set, right towards half court. In games 1 and 2, the Wolves were meeting them out there, and I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? He doesn't want to shoot pull-up threes. It's the one shot he doesn't like. It's the one SGA shot he's not comfortable with. This game, they dropped way back and then more subtly, but more aggressively squeezed from the sides in the corner to narrow off his lanes. Then they pressed up on the other guys like J-Dub and the other guys and forced turnovers and actually made the Thunder have to play offensive basketball the way it is for opponents playing OKC and really hit them back with that one. And the Thunder were really taken aback. They were uncomfortable all night long. Now, there are adjustments that Daigneault will make. I'm going to have to look at watch the game again and figure out what I think those are going to be. You see him benching Hartenstein for the second half. You see him making some other adjustments, trying out like the stuff with AJ Mitchell tonight was him trying stuff to be like, I want to see what this looks like. Like he knows that game was lost and was willing to start experimenting to be like, is there something we can find? Bear in mind, this is the same guy that tried out Kenrich Williams in game 1 and made it work. Like he's willing to play guys for small stints to make it work. Their depth is a value to them. So the Wolves made shots the way that they should have. I was like, you're going to have to show me you can, but they did. And they got it done. But I do think that we're talking big picture takeaway here. Like, yes, the Wolves can be competitive. They put themselves way far behind the 8 ball with how they approach games 1 and 2. And that probably honestly is going to be the series because OKC's better. But the idea that the Wolves were not in OKC's class was categorically wrong, in my opinion. And while they can lose a series in 5, it was always the narrative had gotten a little out of hand with OKC, but I didn't think the betting market had reflected it, which is why I was on OKC. Now we're going to see something interesting with the bounce back spot in game 4, but we'll get to that in a little bit. That's my takeaway from game 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good takeaway. And it's clarifying between two different things. You know, we are in sports media, so we can't talk about sports media without counting ourselves here. But sports media loves to do the overreaction, big picture, go for the kill, like all the big statements. And so we got a lot of series is over, the season is over. We said some of these things, but I think that those things are different than Oklahoma City proved in games 1 and 2. They're in a different class than Minnesota. They blew them off the court. They're never going to even have a chance to win a game. We did not say those things. It just mattered. Like you on the text thread with Raheem Palmer, our friend and former colleague, and I, as we were kind of talking through the game of what do we take away? And you kind of challenged, okay, well, how do we take so much away from games 1 and 2, but so little from this one? I think it's again about framing. I don't think either one of us took away from game 1 and 2. Oh man, Oklahoma City owns the Timberwolves. They destroyed them. They best of 20, they beat them 18 times. I don't think either one of us thought that. What mattered was that they beat them soundly twice, and suddenly it was 2-0, and the series was reduced to Minnesota has to win 4-5. We soundly thought the series was over. I don't know that I unthink that right now. It's a little less over than it was 4 hours ago, but they still have to win 3 out of 4 games against a really good team. And this was, in the scheme of things, probably their most likely win. This spot was probably their most likely win just by nature of spot and kind of how the series sets up. So I don't think that we took so much away from OKC and man, these teams just can't match up. Like you and I didn't think that before the series. I don't think game 1 and 2 showed that. They showed us Oklahoma City is really good. And when they play well and Minnesota turns it over and makes mistakes, they're going to lose by a bunch. The Minnesota didn't turn it over as much tonight. They got their 4th turnover right before halftime. That's great. They're going to hang when they do that. They did not foul Shea tonight. He had 2 free throws in the first half. It was a totally different, the way it was called, and I think just the way they defended. You're right with the tactical of pressuring guys out, not Shea, pressuring everyone but Shea, and changing things up that way. I think it's both. I don't think we come away from tonight being like, man, OKC is a fraud too. They're terrible. Everybody's terrible. All the teams are terrible. Look how terrible they are. They got beat. Like the broadcast even talked about that. There's any number of championship winning teams that had a black mark along the way of, just one terrible loss that they took. I don't think this means that either. Let me pivot to something the broadcast mentioned that I'm a little embarrassed I hadn't really noticed yet, but now that I'm looking at it, it's very glaring. Oklahoma City home and road split. Let me just talk through. Here's OKC at home. Win by 51, win by 19. That's the Grizzlies. Game 1 against the Nuggets. They're way ahead. They lost by 2. That's the only one they've lost. Then win by 43. Meager win by 7. Game 7, win by 32. And then against the Timberwolves, wins by 15 and 26. They are throttling opponents at home. Fine. We knew that. That's what we think about Oklahoma City. Think about the road games. Grizzlies, after those 2 monster wins, they went to Memphis and they won by 6. And then they won by 2 over the 8th seed. We didn't make much of it because they swept them when they closed them out. Then they go to Denver. Game 3
They were down 30 in one of
Denver.
those games too.
What's that?
They were down 30 in one of those Grizzlies.
You're right. You're right. That took the huge, historic comeback in Denver. Game 3. First game in Denver, overtime. They take the L. That was the game Denver had to have. They got it. Game 4, that was the one big win they had on the road this postseason. Win by 5. They were trailing in the 4th quarter. They came back and got it. That was the big one we counted. Game 6 in Denver, close them out. No, lost by 12. Now tonight in Minnesota, you lose by 42. That is a very, very beatable team on the road compared to an invincible team at home for the most part. Small sample, we've got 6-7 games of each. That is a huge, huge disparity, not just from tonight. Obviously you do the net. Tonight's going to throw the net way off. We got a road game next. And if they get that one, we're going to get another road game at least coming later. Is this something?
It feels anecdotally like we're seeing a lot of game 4 not underdogs. Whoever is not supposed to win kind of wins those games. The OKC Thunder are favored in game 4, obviously. But Pacers, I think back to Cavs game 4 when everyone was like, oh, the Cavs are fully healthy now. And I loved Indy in that game in game 4. And they went in and smacked them. This feels a little bit like that.
Which direction?
I think I like OKC in game 4. I can't bet it because I've now been wrong thrice in this series. And so I have to sit down and I'll just ask smart people like you what people should bet. But it feels to me like this is an OKC spot. Now, the market is already going that direction. So this opened for Monday's game 4. This opened Thunder minus 3.5, and there's 4s popping. It was 4's consensus for a second, and now there's back down to a 3.5. But there's a minus 3.5, minus 105. The tickets and money are coming in on Minnesota, but we can see that the market's moving towards OKC, which means the sharp action's coming in on Thunder right now. This is probably going to be Joe's, where sharp action is going to come in on OKC, and the public's going to like the Wolves just to be able to get this another game here off of that one. I don't know though. I would actually expect that as we get closer to tip off, on Sunday, I would expect this to shift pretty dramatically back towards OKC in general. The public and pros will be aligned on OKC. But that's just kind of what I think. What are your kind of thoughts on, do you think that this is a smash spot OKC? You were right about Wolves first half in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that was a system play. That was a trends play as much as anything. And one of the few trends that actually has hit so far. Trends have really been terrible in the playoffs. The go-to trends, at least. I'm not going to call it a smash spot. I don't feel a smash spot on anything this round right now. Okay. But the home road thing has my attention, at least, especially because we've talked a lot about, I still don't totally know what I think about the vaunted depth of Oklahoma City. I know what I think about Shea. I know that J-Dub and Chet are really good, We know that Ihart and Caruso are like elite role players, though neither has been really that great in the series. Caruso has been almost no impact so far. I have been looking at playing his fouls over because that's the biggest thing he's been doing in the series. All those other guys that, like, including Dort and including Isaiah Joe, who played some tonight, Wiggins, who just like cannot figure out how to stay getting minutes. You're on the road. Your role players play worse. Like that's a thing. And the whole thing with the Thunder is, yeah, but they have a whole bunch of role players. Yeah, but they're all role players still. Is it just that the role players are playing worse? Is it the whistle? Is it the home whistle? And that's such an important part of the game for Shea and for the way that they foul defensively and get away with fouling defensively and turning teams over and running out. And like all of that checks out to me with home court versus away. Again, that doesn't make them a fraud. That doesn't make them a smash fade in game 4. I think it's interesting enough to really consider it. You're on, from before the series, Minnesota plus 2.5. So they need to win one of the next 2 games to get there. I'm effectively on the same spot. I have Thunder in 6 or 7. I need one of the next 2 games to get there. Minnesota obviously could win the series, and I lose my bet that way too. If you could, you've got a button right now on your app. You could just choose to erase the bet or play it again or double down. How do you feel about your Minnesota to win one of the next 2 games?
So I have the most likely outcome right now as Thunder in 5.
Me
by
too.
my numbers. But my numbers have been off in the series. So I don't know how much to take from that. I think I would probably still stand with it just based off of the fact of I do think Minnesota is closer to OKC than where we got to after games 1 and 2, and based off of the overall rating on the series. Like the Thunder win game, if I thought that the Wolves had a better chance than the market, and that's why I bet plus 2.5, and Thunder take 1 and 2, and the market is only confirmed by its priors on that. Well, I expected them. Like I built into that bet the possibility and likelihood of the Thunder winning 2 games. Like that's included in the value of that bet. And so I don't necessarily think I would want to erase it. I think I'm okay with it right now.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't cash out of that bet right now. I'm okay with it. I think they can take one more, whether it's in 4 or steal game 5 to force it back to 6. I do not want any sort of outcome where it's like, I don't think there's any value on Minnesota to win the series. I don't think there's any value on Minnesota to have an extreme like Wolves in 6 or anything like that to win the next 3. I don't think there's any value. Like I think OKC's winning the series, but I do think that Minnesota is better than what the perception has been of them in this by the market before the series and after the first 2 games. And I'm okay at this point, like that number with the Thunder being minus, like dancing with -4. I would want to be on Minnesota at that number. I'm not going to be again, but I do think that based off of the number, like I do think that the swings in this series have been pretty dramatic. So that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, a hard thing with, can Minnesota keep it going? Can they win one of the next 2? If the home road thing is a thing, well, one of the next 2 is in Oklahoma City. So we have to assume that, they're back to being a huge favorite in that game. They're already favored in Minnesota. So that makes a lot of importance on game 4, because otherwise, if Minnesota loses that one, you're just back to 3-1 going to OKC, where they've been, again, nearly invincible outside of a final weird 5 minutes against the Nuggets in game 1. So yeah, in the old format, give me a 2-3-2. I love our spot. Give me 2-3-2. I'm feeling great about Wolves plus 2.5 right now. But the game 5 in OKC is trouble. What I know you like to kind of pick the spots on how you think the series is going to play out. Which game between games 4 through 7, obviously pending if we got there, what game is Minnesota most likely to win out of the 4 remaining possibilities?
I think 4. I think
Yeah.
it's very possible they go 2-2, and then everyone's like, brand new series. Whoa, like blown away, amazed. And then they're like, OKC's in real trouble. And then we'll have the counter to what we had after games 1 and 2, right? And I will say, like, you and I did kill them bad after game. Like, I'll take ownership of it. We were pretty much like, all right, well, that's done with. This is out of here.
Again, on the basis of the series more than the actual game, but we did. I wore black to a funeral for the game, so we'll own it.
Yeah. And so I do think game 4, I think the most likely outcome here is Wolves 4, Thunder 5, Thunder 6. That's what I think the most likely outcome is.
Well, you just told me that your most likely outcome is Thunder in 5.
Oh, that's my numbers. Like, that's what the numbers say, is like, that's the most likely. If you ask me just like as a basketball analyst, our feeling, right? Who cares about feelings? But that's my feeling, is that Wolves win game 4, Thunder win game 5, Thunder win a close one in game 6. That to me feels like the outcome. And like,
yeah, I think that I would have Minnesota slightly more likely to win a game 6 than a game 4, but they have to get there to do it. So they still got, I'm very curious to see first quarter game 4. This game, great. Everybody's got the 0-2 punch, come back, make your push. Great job. They took the other punches. All right. Now you're going to hear a different story for a couple of days. Now, how do you show up in the next game? How do you prep for game 4? And you come out with that same ferocity, or do the Thunder now respond with their push? Because that's the whole zigzag thing in the NBA. Yeah, I've had a few people. I see the comment that popped up about the Ant versus Chet rebounding. Chet is, I believe, favorite. Do you have the number on that one, Matt? I didn't see the comment.
Plus 124 in a head-to-head at a book. So 124.
Yeah, somebody asked me about that one today. It depends to me on how much leverage you want to be on Ant. I made the mistake last round with continuing to bet into Jason Tatum stuff, and then he tore his Achilles, and I lost a whole lot of things in a lot of ways. I probably won't bet the Ant versus Chet specifically because I've got so much exposure to Ant already. I don't necessarily need a lot more ways to invest there. I would still say before today, I responded at least to one DM asking the same exact bet. I still felt like Ant and Chet were the most likely rebounding leaders for either team. I don't know if we learned a lot to change that today. Chet had 5, Ihart had 6, Jalen Williams had 5, but that's a lot of garbage time. I don't know. Chet to me, I think, is still going to get the rebounds, and we did see them shift at halftime to not starting Isaiah Hartenstein. Do you make anything of that switch going forward? And it's always hard to know what you do with props on a game like this when it's like half the game is a blowout. As we think about props and or adjustments, what do you think you saw this game that might actually stick, or how can we bet it for next game?
I don't have a sample enough on Dags to know if he's going to stick with it, right? So, like, there's certain coaches that if they made this move, I'd be like, if he did this, then he thinks this is the best path to victory, and he's going to do it again to start game 4. I don't have a big enough sample on Dags to know, because he's never been in the spot of having been beaten by 40 in a playoff game to have to like make that kind of adjustment. If they move, I'll tell you this, if they move Chet, if they go to one big, I'm going to like Minnesota a lot more. It makes Rudy way more playable. It means that Finch isn't going to feel like he needs to counter program as much. And your Ant bet's going to be even better because Rudy's going to box him under the basket and Ant can grab all the loose ones. So that's like a great outcome for you based off of that. Jada will play better. Somebody asked about, Antonio asked about Shea's over-under on points for game 4. It's 31.5. He says that seems extremely high, especially on the road. You're going to have to give me time on that one. Like, we'll do best bets tomorrow night for that game. And so I've got tomorrow to kind of watch some things. I have to kind of game out exactly how I think Dags is going to counter this, because the Wolves did exactly what you need. Like, this is the game plan. It is drop with Rudy Gobert, pinch from the sides, pressure the other dudes, make somebody else beat you while not blitzing Shea. Like, this is the combo that makes Minnesota really dangerous, is hey, we don't, and they did such a better job tonight of not freaking out like they did in the first 2 games. Like they were sending just erratic, nonsensical help in the first 2 games. And I was just like, who is this Wolves team? Like who is, where have my Wolves gone? And this was much more of what I expected from them in the series. And this is going to be tough. Like this is the first kind of scheme set that Shea's going to have a really hard time with, depending on the whistle. Like that's a big factor here. Like Alex Caruso couldn't get to his nonsense tonight because they weren't letting him just hit people with 2x4s. So like he was real bad tonight. And everybody on OKC was bad tonight. There wasn't anybody I think that was good. And it is natural to be like, this is a bounce back spot from that kind of position. I think the question is just like, all right, you can bounce back, but if Minnesota has found enough tactical stuff, there is not like we'll just do this and it's easy. There's not that. I would say probably my initial kind of thought here is Chet Holmgren over points would be something I would look at. And the reason is they were like, they did this versus Yoke too. If you're having problems with a guy just sitting in the paint, a really good way to counter it is if that guy's guarding Chet Holmgren, have Chet attack from the perimeter because he's fast enough and has a good enough dribble to get by him and score. And you saw that tonight in that first quarter play where Chet was able to beat him, and then Ant came down, hit another 3, and then they got like 3 steals and it was over. But like those are like little things I think that they can do in that kind of adjustment period. So Shea, I do not know what the adjustment's going to be. That's not to say that he can't, like he can just go out there and hit shots. That's the counter, is like you just rise and fire contested and knock down shots, and Shea can do that. But this is going to be like, this is the scheme that I think is best to try and slow down SGA. And I'll be very curious to see how Dags responds. Double screen action is usually what teams do when this happens versus Minnesota, is they're like, oh, we'll run double screen sets. Minnesota is really good at navigating those. They have big, athletic, long, smart defenders that know how to navigate it. There's not like an easy fix for this. That doesn't mean that Shea can't beat it. Just I don't have anything right away to go one side or the other on Shea 31.5.
Yeah, Alex Caruso posted a 3 trillion tonight. He was 1 of 5 from the field. He made 1 3-pointer. He had no rebounds, no assists, no stocks, 2 fouls if that counts. I don't know if that counts for your trillion numbers or not. I don't love betting a Shea points prop just like ever, really, if I'm being honest. A star points prop is just not a good go-to bet, because I know it's fun. I know you want to see the stars score the points, but I feel like there are other ways to do it. Maybe you isolate a quarter that you want him in. Maybe you live bet it if he's starting slow or something like that. It's 31 is just such a high number. And I know it's like, that's what Shea does, but like you got to have a lot go right. And I feel like if it does go right, I'd rather play like a 35, 40, 45 escalator or something like that. We're like, okay, well, if it's going to go right, let's make it worth our while. It's just hard to interest me in a line that's going to always be inflated, because that's a pretty public sort of bet. And you're probably paying a point or two to be able to play it. Yeah. What's the Gobert line right now for points?
Yeah, it's 6.5 is what Antonio says for points. He had 7 tonight. What I'll tell you is I actually would not want to fade this number. He only played 28 minutes tonight. One of their key adjustments was getting him the ball and actually letting him force fouls. He had a runaway transition play, right? Where he drew a foul. But he had that dunk on the interior that was one of his best plays, I think, in postseason history offensively, along with like the fadeaway jumper he hit versus Denver last year.
Yeah, that's a good one. And if they go smaller and it's just Chet, then he's gonna get a couple of those easy offensive rebound putbacks too.
Like he can hit this by going 5 of 10 from the line. That's a realistic pathway for him to get there on this. So yeah, I think I would not want to go under on Rudy Gobert, based off of the fact that they have been way better in him with his minutes than they have without him in the series. Like it's a real thing that they have been better with him on the court. Plus 23 in his 28 minutes tonight. They were, by the way, shout out Julius Randle, 24 points, 9 to 15 shooting, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Julius had a great bounce back game. He was amazing.
Good. So we talked on the going into the series about how with Oklahoma City, the thing you also talk about is 2 things: turnovers and free throws. I know Minnesota made all the threes today. I know Ant was awesome, especially in the first quarter. Turnovers and free throws. Well, free throws weren't huge, but Shea only 4 free throws is like a, top 90th percentile or better Minnesota outcome. Turnovers. 14 for Oklahoma City, 4 each for Shea and J-Dub. But here's the stat that really caught my eye just looking at this. Oklahoma City had 5 steals tonight, but really they had 1. Because 4 of the steals were from Arkansas, Jalen Williams, Dylan Jones, Isaiah Joe, and AJ Mitchell, like bench guys at the end of the game. They had 1 steal this game compared to 22 steals the first 2 games. That's not just defense, that's offense. That's what the Thunder do. So Minnesota won their turnover battle both directions this game. To me, that's the thing we need to ask ourselves. What about that is or is not repeatable? Is that just OKC being a young team, smelling themselves a little bit, and they weren't totally locked in, and Minnesota showed up, locked in, played well? Is it that? Is it that Minnesota is scoring well? So then it's, rather than forcing things a little bit, forcing the threes and missing, and then it's a little bit easier to force the turnover as well. Like, we've said it all 3 rounds on our series preview. With Oklahoma City, you got to start with the turnovers. Turnovers, not threes, not free throws, not anything else. Turnovers completely swung the other way. Minnesota stopped turning it over and started turning over the Thunder. Is there anything you saw that makes that repeatable? Because I think that's the biggest question that could still swing the series. If the turnover margin is this way, the rest of the series, which we did see happen somewhat in the regular season, Minnesota turned it over a bunch the first game and then suddenly stopped the other 3 games. If the turnover margin swings this drastically, Minnesota is live to win the series. Is there something you saw that looks like turnovers could really keep swinging this way for both teams?
One of the things I thought was that the 31-10 in game 1 turnover margin was such an extreme outlier that I was like, that's not going to hold. And it didn't. It regressed a little bit back in game 2, but not much. And then went the whole other direction in this game. I think the reality is probably that game 4 is going to be probably pretty close. I think if that one's the most likely game in the series to be close. Game 5 is going to be Thunder by 1 billion, I think. And then game 6 could be close, but I think the most likely close game is game 4. And that's one where the turnover margin and turnover points off of turnovers margin can shrink, right? Can be less than it was in game 1 and not as bad for OKC as it was in game 3, and then find somewhere in the middle. And the question there is, can Minnesota home shooting be enough to counter that? Because that was kind of the cap in the series preview was, hey, they're going to get turnovers. They're going to get points off of turnovers. They got to make their threes. They made their threes tonight. We need to go. That's going to do it for Buckets. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to check out post-game tomorrow. It'll be me and Jim Turvey and Joe Delera. You get to see Joe Delera either after a Knicks win in the conference finals or not. So you should tune in for that. We'll have more on that game. Write-ups at Action Network and in the Action Network app. Follow Eaton Brando for more plays like the Anthony Edwards rebound leader. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us. Great weekend of hoops. Till we see you again, let's get buckets.